Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today coming at you with a little bit of Bethesda news. It feels like we're just sort of biding our time this week. Of course, we have a lot of games coming out soon, from Lords of the Fallen to Spider-Man 2, but for Xbox fans, we're biding our time until that Friday, where apparently, finally, the Activision Blizzard deal will close. And so news is very slow on the Bethesda and Xbox front, but we have a decent amount to talk about today, from Fallout to Starfield to Elder Scrolls 6 and how the testing cycle for that game will work. So it's a nice grab bag of all the Bethesda Game Studios IP. We're going to go through them all, starting off with a Starfield update. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are new here and you're into Bethesda news and information, you're in the right place. Please do consider subscribing. And before we begin, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Factor. Are you too busy to cook this fall? Honestly, let's keep it real here, okay? I have been reviewing a ton of games. I've been going a mile a minute. I've been falling behind on a lot of my health goals, and Factor has really helped pick me up here with fresh, never frozen meals that are ready in just 2 minutes. Seriously, just having a good, healthy meal right up a flight of stairs, warm it up, get back to what I'm doing. It's so crucial during this time of year. I'm not going to sell you like my job is the hardest thing in the world, but I'm a really busy boy, and so cooking can chip away at the time that you need to produce other pieces of content. And so this is where Factor's really helping me out. Not only that, but they're giving me a boost to support my wellness goals, to feel as best as I possibly can. They even have Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein, and you can round out your meals and replenish your snack supply with an assortment of 45 plus add-ons to suit various preferences and tastes. So they just got everything for everybody. So what are you waiting for? Head to factor75.com or click the link down below and use the code MattyPlays50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. So with Starfield, we were promised 5+ years of updates, and my question with that was, how quick are things going to start going, with Starfield having some issues to iron out after its launch? Not really on the bugs front, but more so on features, from city maps to FOV sliders. How quickly could Bethesda Game Studios start to implement these, and what would the drip feed look like? Well, we already have one of those features that was promised to us being added to the game in the latest update, and we have all of the notes here. It's not a massive one, but it does add a key feature that was requested to be there at launch. So you'll see here that in update 1.7.36, we have FOV sliders are now available in settings that allow players using first or third person to adjust their FOV. And performance and stability. PC only has improved stability for Intel Arc GPUs and various additional stability and performance improvements, with a single quest fix. Echoes of the past addressed an issue where tunneling creatures could pick a location that would prevent progression. Naturally, we want to stomp out any progression preventers, but the big one here is, as you could already tell, the FOV slider. Previously, what people had to do was something that you saw in some of my videos with modded footage, was you had to install a mod for it to pull out the FOV, and didn't add a slider to the game. It was something in the ini settings for the game that these modders would tag in, and it would pull the camera out a little bit more. It made it where running around in third person was pretty intense, but now you can pull out the FOV, which I think, especially in first person, is super necessary. Just like in Fallout 4, Starfield has some really bulky, in-your-face guns. I'm talking about you, Equinox. There are some really chunky weapons, and it would be nice to just pull out a little bit and see more of the detail there. I think that Starfield is Bethesda's best looking game, so I want to see the full gun model to the best of my abilities. But as I said, just after the launch of Starfield, my assumption on the reason these were never included in the first place, because I know some people are going to think, well, why weren't these here? And it's not to make excuses, but just provide a level of understanding, is my guess is since Starfield needed to have a pretty steady frame rate, which for all its flaws, all that you love about it, I think we can all agree that the game was pretty steady out the gate, which was nice to see for a Bethesda game studio on a polished level, that when you pull out the FOV more, you're taking in more visuals. That's more of a chance for frame rate to dip, so you would destabilize some things and then implement FOV sliders afterwards. Should it have been there at launch? Absolutely, completely agree. But for those still wondering, why wasn't this here in the first place? That's my honest best guess. I don't think it was just an oversight, because that's kind of like a you need to have it on PC at least option. But still, FOV sliders are there, couple of stability improvements, and now we continue to wait for other things to be added, like official DLSS support. And it seems like, based off the cadence we're seeing here with Starfield, we're going to get these quick, snappy little updates. I don't know if we're going to get a Cyberpunk 2077 level patch list where it's just miles and miles and miles long, especially that game was kind of busted. We already know that. But I mean, it was a long, long list we'd get for every single update and all the changes coming to it, where it looks like Starfield is doing more minimal but frequent updates, and maybe around the time of an expansion is where we'll see dramatic changes being added to the game. Anyway, that's what's going on with Starfield right now. Just a little patch being added to the game. I want to shift our focus to Fallout. Now, I know some of you may immediately want to click off when you see Fallout 76, but hear me out. I wanted to talk about this a little bit because we're warming up with Atlantic City, which is coming out in early December of this year. It's going to be a 2-part release. You know, Fallout 76 has been pretty devoid of content additions this year, so this is a pretty big deal for them to nail. And Bethesda has posted on their official YouTube channel, Boardwalk Paradise Developer Diaries. There's 2 parts up. Took some time out of my day to watch both of them and see what's going on with this update, because I'm not going to lie, with, you know, the Great War date coming up and that leaked Fallout trailer, I feel like Bethesda's sort of sitting on a lot of Fallout gold right now, and I'm getting a little optimism back in my veins. So I want to know, with Atlantic City, what are the plans for this expansion? And the reason I want to ask that is because many people are in the same boat as me. You know, Appalachia, I think, turned out to be a great setting choice for 76, whether you loved it or hated it. Even at launch, I think you could see the potential in that world. One of the bright spots of the game was the Appalachia. And as time went on, you know, you spend, 5 years in there. Yeah, it might be time for a little switcheroo. And when we had the pit announced, it was exciting because it felt like this homage to an OG Fallout 3 DLC. What more could we do in the pit? And it was just a drop spot for a mission. So with Atlantic City, the question was, is it going to be more of that? Is it going to be an explorable area? And I feel like Bethesda in these developer diaries is being a tad cagey. We do see gameplay snippets. We do see new enemies shown off. They do describe it as open and explorable with new quests. It seems like there's a story of some kind here. There are 3 new factions in which all these expeditions that are in this DLC are going to have it based around them. So there's one, for example, called The Family that they reference a lot, and this is one that's going to have an expedition based around them. So the first part is going to have 2 expeditions and some quests. As I was listening to them talk, this feels a bit like what happened with Steel Dawn and Steel Rain, where it's this sort of 2-part story where one part felt kind of fresh and the other part felt kind of like thrown in leftovers to stretch out how much content could be thrown into the game. When they said that the first part has 2 expeditions, the second part has 1, that there are some quests and it's explorable, I am excited about a new explorable area in Fallout. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself, but I do just worry a touch about splitting up the story, what that may do, because again, I think 76 is actually capable of telling a decent story. For all the game's faults, I really did like Wastelanders. I thought it was a good time, and so I hope we can get more of that here. But when you're splitting up, the content drops into 2 parts. It is, well, I mean, that's the way live service stories are typically consumed, are they not? I think Wastelanders is more of an apology, which is why it worked for me more, because it was 15 to 20 hours of just free stories, free content. I mean, it was awesome. So I don't know if they're ever going to re-deliver that. I don't think it's financially sensible, but it was a good launch pad for them to sort of get the reset going. But just some updates in general on 76 and the Atlantic City expansion. Of course, you can count on me to be doing my review of that, because I am very curious about what's going on here with Atlantic City. And so, yeah, some of the gameplay and new enemy types look interesting. They did talk about how no place in the United States was untouched by the Great War, but that Atlantic City was particularly missed in some spots, and so that's why some parts are intact. I'm starting to notice this is a good fallback option for any Fallout game that wants to set itself somewhere. Like, yeah, all these other places were nuked to shit, but not this one here. This one, we were able to keep a casino up and running. Anyway, that's what's going on with 76. The last one here is titled Good News for Elder Scrolls 6. Bethesda tried a new testing process with Starfield, and Todd Howard says it worked so well that it's the new standard. Now, we're going to read through another set of snippets here in this Todd Howard podcast that he did with Ted Price, the head of Insomniac Games. But the reason I really wanted to highlight this is Starfield was more polished than any other Bethesda Game Studios game. I did see the Honest conference video where there were a ton of bugs on display in Starfield. That video is so funny, by the way. If you haven't seen it, just literally look up Starfield Honest Games Conference. So funny. Also kind of scary because of AI voices. But anyway, it's not free of its bugs, but it's definitely way more polished comparatively speaking to other BGS games. And so the question was, is this just something that had a lot of time in the oven, or is there a process here that Bethesda can deploy once more? And it seems like it is the latter. So let's read this article from Games Radar and then discuss a bit more. Speaking with Insomniac Games CEO Ted Price in a recent interview, Howard reveals that a version of Starfield that was basically done was shared with the team in late 2022, with the general message being, this should be the game you're playing over the holiday. This kicked off the wave of team-wide playtesting, and Howard reckons that on top of the obvious benefits of having a chunk of time dedicated to polish, the work-from-home environment added a special little something. Price asks if this style of take-home QA is normal for Bethesda, and Howard says that it isn't, but that it will be now. Todd continues on saying, it was sort of a pandemic thing too, where people were at home, so how do we get builds at home, Howard says. But even if you're working at home, you're usually on your PC. We knew given the scale of the game, that's where we wanted to be, so we made a goal for this project to have that much time to be playing it and polishing it. The go home part, I think, is very interesting, and continues. The things you notice, even if you're working from home, you're on a PC, you're on a dev kit. When you say, I'm going to put it on your retail Xbox, you're in your usual environment, you're on your sofa, your speaker setup is a certain way, you just came off playing Ratchet & Clank or Spider-Man or whatever, you're instantly comparing to the last thing you were playing. And the way you see even your own game changes. There's some delta there in how you look at it that we found, everybody in the team found really impactful, both positive and then figuring out, hey, I think our 5.1 sound setup is a little off. It could be anything, or font sizes. Now you're sitting 10 feet away and you're used to sitting 2 feet away. So yeah, Bethesda Game Studios has transferred to more of an at-home QA testing across the team. They also mentioned in this interview how things are pretty brutal on the feedback front. One particular thing they referenced was planetary hazards, which apparently were dialed down a ton. I've mentioned in multiple videos that you can feel the survival mechanics completely stripped out of this game and what it once was versus what it is now. And there's no doubt in my mind that they're just going to pop those right back in the game for an update down the stretch when they feel they've fine-tune things a decent amount, because Starfield feels like a pretty decent setup for a survival game of some kind or a survival playthrough of some kind. I think it's just all right there, especially from the way fast traveling works, the lack of planetary hazards. I mentioned how some planets didn't feel distinct enough in my final review because, you know, there was just zero gravity, lower gravity, normal gravity, and that was kind of it. Anything else, I would just apply a bandage or a med pack or whatever, and I would be fine. So I'm curious to see when they add those back in, but I thought this was relevant because obviously it's important for Bethesda Game Studios to nail Elder Scrolls 6, just like they had to nail Starfield on a technical level and not let it be a disaster. Something kind of like what happened with Redfall. We saw the blowback there, and the first thought everyone had in their mind was, imagine Starfield is that bad. What is the status of Starfield? Now we know, now there's a lot less worry, and it seems like Bethesda may have figured something out between time and money and process to make sure that their games function much better than they previously had before, which, while Starfield was a big deal because I think it signified a turning point for Xbox as a generation, it's still a top 3 most played game on Xbox next to Fortnite and Call of Duty, so whether people love it or hate it or trying to convince you to love it or hate it, doesn't matter. The game has been a tremendous success and is seeing a ton of play. The reality is that when you come around to Elder Scrolls 6, that is the big one. And I think it's going to be the one, I'm sticking with my prediction here, that's going to start off that next generation. I think if you want a dominant launch title that brings people to the platform, the timing's just right. It's the end of 2023, 5 to 6 year development cycle puts us right in the realm of a new generation. And if you launch with Elder Scrolls 6, it'd be pretty powerful stuff, but we'll see, because Bethesda needs to squeeze it in that 5-year gap, and if they need more time, then it may be beyond that usual 7 to 8-year console generation cycle we experience. And there's also the reality of, is it going to even be a console? Is it going to be a platform, digital only? We'll see. We'll discuss all of that much further down the line. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to go over this Bethesda news, from the latest patch in Starfield to Fallout 76 updates, as well as what's going on with Elder Scrolls 6 testing. And I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts, so be sure to fire away. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.